Hey everybody, and welcome to this underscore where we are talking about ushering in a learning revolution. So today we've been talking about AI, and our recent research from Forrester told us that over 50% of companies or education teams really are using AI in their practice today. And a lot of people have asked, okay, that's cool, but what are they using it for? And that's what we're talking about today. And I'm excited for you to hear from some people from the team here at Intellum a little bit about how you can practically apply AI to your education practice to unlock productivity and increase the efficiency of your team. So when we're asked that, do more with less thing, AI can obviously like be part of that solution, and we're going to talk about some ways that we can do that. A little housekeeping before we get started. You can feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. You can chat with everybody, so if you want to share some things that you've learned from your experience, you just want to say hi and let us know where you're calling in from, you can do that in the chat. If you would like to turn on closed captions, you can do that at the bottom of your screen. If you do have questions for us as we're going, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A box. That'll help us to kind of like corral all the questions in one place for our Q&A closer to the end. And then, of course, this webinar is being recorded. So if you have to jump off at some point, if you missed something, you wanted to go back, we'll be recording this webinar and you can watch it later. We'll also send you the recordings of the previous webinars today as well. So without much further ado, I'm going to kick it over to my friend and colleague, Anderson, who's our Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Intellum. He's going to chat with us for a little bit, and then we're going to bring on Jeff Stanke, our VP of Product, for a Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. Yeah, as Shannon just said, my name is Anderson Campbell, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager here at Intellum. And joining me today, let's see him on the slide, and we'll hear from him later on, is Jeff Stanke. He's our VP of Product. And I can tell you on behalf of us both, we're pretty excited to talk with you about Intellum, our AI story, and the ways in which we think that we are changing the way that education is delivered. So we're going to start kind of big picture, and then we're going to get down into actual things that you as ed tech folks, I think, can experiment with and learn from through the Intellum products. And as Shannon said, we'll have some time for Q&A, so populate that stuff in the Q&A box down there. All right. In terms of an agenda for today, during this particular session, here's an outline of the kind of things that we'll be talking through. I'm going to talk us through AI's vision for AI in education, Intellum's vision for AI in education. I'll highlight some of the innovations that we've been working on in Intellum Labs. I'll even tell you what that is. I know you've heard a little bit about Intellum Labs in a couple of our previous sessions, and we'll discuss a little bit about where we're headed next, what we think the future of AI at Intellum is, the future of EdTech and AI, and that's really where we'll bring Jeff in. He, I think, is going to be able to answer questions about the future of EdTech and AI, maybe talk a little bit about the challenges that we have faced at Intellum regarding AI, things that we've learned from those. So our goal here really is to give you a comprehensive understanding of how AI is transforming learning experiences, how we see AI streamlining content creation, and personalizing education. I mean, I think that you'll find that's going to be the big takeaway from today, is AI has a promise to personalize education like never before. So without further ado, let's dive in. So the AI awakening. The emergence of artificial intelligence, I think it's really heralded a new era of possibility and promise. It's AI in almost all industries has been pushing the boundaries of what we think is achievable. And the history of this current wave of AI isn't actually that long, right? I mean, just back in 2023 is when OpenAI, ChatGPT, marked kind of a pivotal moment in AI awareness and accessibility to AI tools. And it really propelled AI into the forefront of the global conversation almost overnight. I mean, maybe you remember waking up one morning and it seemed like everybody is now talking about ChatGPT, generative AI, how awesome that is, or maybe how terrifying that is. Well, in the months since then, we've seen Gen AI adoption absolutely surge. I mean, OpenAI, they had about 100 million monthly active users within 2 months of launching ChatGPT. AI Generative AI has sparked innovation across a ton of different industries. If you look at how quickly it was implemented by folks like content marketers, right? Content marketers started jumping on the ChatGPT bandwagon early for creating content, for drafting pieces, for engaging in editing. Lawyers, they found a ton of efficiencies in doing legal research and document drafting. Software developers have been using ChatGPT and generative AI for software debugging, for code debugging. But the flip side to that is that the rapid rise of AI has kind of been a little bit of a double-edged sword. It does have potential to revolutionize industries, that's undeniable. But sometimes I think the rush to stay relevant with AI has led a lot of companies to AI washing. This is layering on maybe a thin veneer of innovation that's really masking a void of substance. We sometimes call this proof of concept in a bow. In fact, the Federal Trade Commission, they even warned companies about making bogus claims in their advertising. And this is anything ranging from exaggerations to outright fabrications about a product's AI capabilities. So it seems that for as enamored as we all were about I think we can all say we've been a little burned by these big grandiose promises and have become maybe sometimes a little skeptical about AI claims. Well, in ed tech today, and you all know this, I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, the process of creating and delivering educational content is fraught with a lot of inefficiencies, right? Outdated methodologies. You have businesses and learners alike finding themselves wrestling with software that feels a little cumbersome, a little unintuitive, kind of a remnant of a bygone era. We look at content creation. Right now, content creation is labor intensive. It demands a lot of resources for often underwhelming results. Moreover, we've seen recently that the education technology market has been saturated with solutions that promise innovation, but really what they deliver are kind of merely superficial enhancements. Providers frequently are releasing AI features that, while initially are eye-catching, they offer little in terms of actual enduring value or impact. And this approach has created this chasm between the hype of AI capabilities on one side and then the reality of their implementation. And there's this trail of unmet expectations between the two, disillusioned people, disillusioned enterprises. At Intellum, we envision a pretty different future, one where AI is the cornerstone of an entire learning revolution. So our ambition with AI extends beyond these incremental improvements, rushing to get some sort of neat AI bauble out. Instead, we're rethinking what AI can deliver into the marketplace. We aim for a 10x increase in content creation efficiency. That benefits directly you. A redefined user experience, something that we imagine mirrors a natural human interaction, software that understands your intent directly, eliminating the need for navigating through menus and buttons. So I want to dive into Intellum's AI vision and some ways that we're making this coming revolution a reality, things that we're doing now. So we look at AI and the promise of AI in ed tech, and there are a few things that immediately jump out to us. The first I just mentioned, intent-based user experiences. So no more two-dimensional software interactions, that clicking through buttons and menus and navigating to achieve your outcomes. Instead, imagine for a moment that impacting your educational goals was done with simple prompts. Something like telling the software, send a completion letter to any new hire or a completion reminder to any new hire within the past 60 days who's yet to complete their training. Instead of having to build all that out, you just send in the prompt and the software does it for you. Or how about another one? Assign the product onboarding path to any customer who set up their account in the past 2 weeks. With this kind of natural language functionality, we go directly from your intent to action. And I think we're going to be able to realize an unrivaled, rapid acceleration of time to value. Revolutionized content creation. Gen AI introduces incredible opportunities to rapidly accelerate the creation of content from a bunch of disparate source material. I mean, think of the hours of time that it takes for an instructional designer or a content creator to sift through all of those various types of source material, pull in the relevant bits and parts, weave them together for an audience of learners. Generative AI makes it possible to produce diverse, dynamic educational materials on demand at a scale that is previously unimaginable. This can support the growth and enhancing the scalability of your programs and initiatives. Consistent analysis and continuous improvement. AI can support a level of analysis that unlocks patterns and insights at a scale we've never really seen before, facilitating a continuous cycle of improvement and personalization in the content we create, how we understand that content's use and effectiveness, and even how and when we deliver content to learners. So that then leads to, I think, the ultimate outcome that we're driving towards with AI and ed tech, and that's true personalization. This brings into focus our vision for a learning revolution. It culminates in an experience that transcends traditional learning management systems. We're talking about personalized, one-on-one tutoring and learning that truly adapts to each user's needs, goals, and learning pace. Again, imagine a future in which interactions with an educational software are as natural as conversing with a mentor, where the barriers between learner and knowledge are dissolved by an intuitive, intelligent technology that understands not just the words, but the intent and the aspirations behind them. This is truly personalized learning done at scale. And we're not just imagining this future at Intellum, we're actively building it. In late 2023, we launched Intellum Labs. That's our incubator for AI-driven innovation in learning. And Intellum Labs gives our clients early access to try the latest innovative learning and admin assistant features we're working on so that they can get immediate value from early stage Intellum AI features. And this particular approach moves us faster towards that grand vision of an Intellum platform that's built on industry-leading AI learner and admin experiences. And it ultimately, I think, will land us in a new class of business software. So what Intellum Labs does is it gives clients a low-risk opportunity to try experimental, innovative Intellum features at their own pace. Intellum Labs gives visibility into the new forward-thinking features that we're working on, and it allows our clients to control the implementation of early-stage features in their Intellum instances. And to date, we have released 2 features into Intellum Labs, with a third one that is imminent, which is exciting. So the first of the features that we released into Intellum Labs is called generative assessments. As all of you know, creating assessments, and there was a session earlier where Melody talked about this, creating assessments is a pretty time-consuming process. It requires a lot of manual effort. And anytime there's a lot of manual effort, that can lead to errors and inconsistencies in the content that's created. It can lead to poorer learner outcomes. There's a whole wide range of challenges when scaling to large audiences. So generative assessments as a feature takes the pain out of creating targeted, effective assessment questions using your content. It's fast, it's accurate, and it's instructive in the assessment questions that it creates based off of your content. So with generative assessments, we've made a huge leap forward in the assessment creation process. We have been working to improve the overall quality, and we've done this based off of instructional design best practices. And we've reduced the time and resources it takes for you to deliver high quality assessment questions, which has led to a more precise evaluation of learner understanding and better learner outcomes for you and your learners. And this, we think, frees you up to spend more time on strategic work and less time on low value tasks. The next thing that we released into AI labs, Intellum labs, is automated learning objectives. I loved seeing someone in an earlier session start experimenting with automated learning objectives right in the middle of the session. Learning objectives, as you know, are the heart of good instructional design. Learning objectives help you organize content. They provide a framework for learners to approach new concepts. They connect engagement with learning outcomes in ways that you can measure and then improve upon. Well, this feature lets you automate the creation of learning objectives from existing content. In seconds, AI examines your content, it understands what that content is meant to impart, and then it organizes that into a series of learning objectives, which you can then edit and display to users right at the beginning of your content so they understand what they're about to dive into and what they should be learning as a result. Okay, now for a sneak peek into a feature that hasn't been released yet, but will be soon, and that's AI personalized learning. As a learner, I'm sure you've all experienced this, trying to find relevant learning that fits your exact wants and needs at the right time. It's like trying to find that proverbial needle in a haystack, right? You fill out forms and surveys, and they've got prescriptive, restrictive drop downs and fields. And even after you fill out all that stuff, you're still met with mostly generic course suggestions. You search through course catalogs, you're trying to guess what are the right keywords that might surface the learning I need. You'll often come up empty. As an admin, you want to make it easy for every learner to connect with the exact content that they need, but creating truly personalized learning plans today requires a ton of manual effort. That's not scalable, and it's limited by groups and rules engines that don't get nearly personalized enough. Well, AI has the power to create true personalization at any scale. Intellum's AI personalized learning introduces a conversational AI assistant that connects the learner to personalized course recommendations. And it does this through a natural language, real-time conversation. The AI assistant gathers information from the learner, and it can then determine the learner's goals, match them to key skills, and provide the learner with a custom learner profile and hyper-personalized learning plan. And this is just the beginning. In the future, we imagine your AI assistant able to do much, much more. Okay, so that is a ton of talking from me. I see activity in the chat, questions coming in the Q&A. I love the engagement. So I want to bring in Jeff Steinke, our VP of Product, into the discussion because I think we can delve a little bit deeper into some of Intellum's AI strategy and challenges, what our key findings have been so far. And for this portion, I'm actually going to ask if Shannon would come back and kind of moderate our discussion here. And as I do that, I invite you all to submit your questions using the Q&A box. Some of you have been doing that already. Shannon, it's all yours, and I'll take down this slide so we can see everybody's pretty faces a little bit more.
Awesome. All right. Well, that was great, Anderson. And thank you everybody again for being here. If you have questions, drop them in the Q&A. I see a few in there already. So we'll just go ahead and get started. So Jeff, Anderson was talking a bit about kind of a long-term approach. And so maybe can you talk to us a little bit about like timeline, horizon? How do we see AI impacting or evolving in ed tech over the next few years?
I wasn't sure if you quite said next 2 years or next few years, but either way, Shannon, I think that the takeaway for me is it's probably more in months than years. I mean, this is one of those where like it's almost fruitless to try to guess the timeline. But instead, what we can talk about is like, what do we know about where we're going? And the one thing that I think is really clear and obvious to us, and probably a lot of the folks out there as well, is that well, actually, let me take a step back. In ed tech in general, or ed tech education in general, we know that the most effective way for learners to learn is through a hyper-personalized learning environment, that one-on-one tutoring experience. It's the best way to quickly and rapidly absorb and grow and with that develop in the learner's personalized journey. We now have a way with AI to scale that in a way we never have before. And so what's the logical conclusion of that? Well, that's a virtual tutor. And so I think that's where we're going. No question about that. There's maybe a question about when, but even then, whether that's, 12 months from now, 36 months from now, it's all of the relative near future. And then once you start going down the path of that virtual tutor, there's a few other outcomes that or second order effects that come into play. So, what does that mean? You can have a completely personalized learning journey. So maybe the concept of a course or a lesson today in a learning path, is no longer like a cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's completely bespoke to the learner. I mean, even the content itself there's where we can go down where the content is generated on the fly, that's personalized to the learner based off of the areas of their development versus the areas that they've already mastered. So I think that's where we're going. Some of the areas that I'm less certain about is, maybe thinking about, okay, on the Gen AI side, on the content creation side, what is the ultimate level that humans will still need to be involved? So, I think personally that, this world where there's a magic button, your magic easy button where you just click it and then your course is just magically generated. I don't think that's realistic, or at least in the near future. I think there's still going to be a level of human involvement in the authoring process, to kind of oversee and advise and to course correct. And if we think about AI, one of the analogies I heard early on is thinking about AI as having just, thousands of interns. Well, even if you have those thousands of interns, you still want the process of working and collaborating with them. You don't just say, hey team, I need you to go create this course, and then they magically create it and it's perfect. Like there still is that iterative interaction. So that's an area where I'm still a little bit less certain on, is like, what's that fine line between, where humans are still involved in the authoring and content creation and delivery process versus where AI can run all that. Now, an area where I think AI can be much more involved is, if we think about things like some of the rote tasks around things. Like Anderson gave a great example earlier of just saying like, well, hey, can you just send a letter to any of my new hires who've completed onboarding within X days? I mean, that's something that is bread and butter for AI. And so that's a place where I think, the more administrative tasks, which frankly, probably the less enjoyable tasks that we don't want to be doing, that it can't come on and really own that really nicely. So I'm kind of a long-winded answer there, Shannon, but hopefully that gives you a sense of just, kind of what's going on in my head in terms of where I think we're going on the AI front in the ed tech space.
No, I think that's the big question of the day, right? Is we're talking about today and the kind of the evolution, even in Anderson, you mentioned this, of even just in the last year with the introduction of ChatGPT into, all of our workspaces, making it more accessible to everybody. And so we're seeing these rapid advances. So timelines, who knows?
Yeah.
Exactly when. It's really hard to predict, but to just be thinking creatively about the future and how this impacts our work. And someone said earlier, this is like an arriving technology where there's so much room to learn about it and grow with it, and so much more that it'll be capable of. All right. Different question. So when we're looking at kind of building AI into our products, what are some of the challenges that come with that? Because I think that, right, like there are so many AI products on the market. What are some of the challenges that go into building that, obstacles to implementing AI within a product?
There are a lot. Let's see. I have a couple that come to mind that I think are relevant for this audience. One, this is if I think about building AI into my products versus what we've done elsewhere at Intellum in the past, we had to introduce an entirely new step into our software development life cycle, and that's the whole quality analysis piece. One of the things that Anderson talked about earlier is like not avoiding the proof of concept phase. Like that's great from like an ideation phase, but that's not something that ultimately is going to deliver value in the long term. And so we had to reset our whole development process to have specific steps.
I think I'm looking at Anderson's face move, thinking we have maybe lost Jeff for a second here.
Yeah, and I am sure that he will be back on in just a moment. And while he is, I mean, maybe we can pivot over to another question. I mean, there was one that came through just a moment ago, really asking about if there's a good way to design soft skills content through AI. And I mean, I would say yes, because when it comes down to it, whether you're talking hard skills or soft skills, skills are still skills, and that knowledge can be transferred. I think that you know Jeff was starting to allude to content assessment and generation, and I think that when we are looking at the ways in which soft skills can be taught to folks, we can use AI as a way of extracting, like, what are those key things that would signify the measurement of those skills? How can we map those to learning objectives and outcomes? And then what are the kind of questions or demonstrated behaviors that we need to see in order to assess that? So I think whether you're talking hard skills or soft skills, we're talking about skills that can be tracked and measured, and AI certainly can help generate the content around that. And some of that's going to depend on the source material that the AI has to work with as well. Jeff, we just pivoted to another question that came in the chat
All good.
while the AI was trying to cut you off.
Yeah. Oh, it did a good job. I don't know where I got cut off. Is it worth finishing up on that last question, or I'm not
No,
sure.
I think so, because we pivoted a little bit, and so you were talking about how it kind of has changed some of our product development cycle and iterations. Some
Yeah, gotcha. Perfect. So yeah, maybe I'll just kind of summarize like the development process. We've had to insert a whole new step in terms of the quality review of the content that's getting generated. Any AI generated content, we want to make sure it's good enough. So it's almost like a new QA step we've integrated, and that's also the individuals as well. So it's not just like our existing QA resources, but actually getting instructional design experts into that process. So that's a big challenge. Another piece on the quality side is what we found is just garbage in, garbage out. So AI is great at taking content and, or taking source content and turning that into whatever you want it. If that source content is garbage, guess what? The output's going to be garbage. That's been a big part of our process too. And that kind of goes back to my comment earlier about, I still think there's going to be a human element in that process, that review, to help oversee that. The two other challenges that I was thinking of while my internet conveniently shut down, one is just it's a brand new design paradigm. That's difficult for us, difficult but challenging but fun, is to just think about this intent-based UI UX. But that's also going to be hard for the learner or the user, because this is new. It's a new use of the product, as there's new habits to learn and get accustomed to. You're almost used to the old point and click, like you're used to those Microsoft menus of like drop downs, and like even though it may not be the most efficient, you're used to it. So there's a learning curve there. The last one, maybe not the most exciting, but one of the real challenges is like, how do you balance as a software organization? We have, there are bugs in the platform today. There are other really exciting features I want to be able to deliver to my clients that really have nothing to do with AI, but are, going to drive a tremendous amount of value to our clients today. And so it's just the age-old product question of how do we prioritize, stuff that's effective near term and really valuable near term versus the long-term strategy of where we want to be in a few years. So yeah, hope that kind of recaps that one a little bit for you, Anderson and Shannon.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of great questions coming in. So feel free, we have some time here. So if folks have questions, feel free to continue to add those in. So maybe, Jeff, you've been talking a little bit about some of the challenges. How do we approach the development of AI-driven features? How do we build that into the right? So, because you were talking about like the quality input creates quality output. How are we making sure that we're developing more like refined features and functionality using AI?
Yeah. So maybe what I'll talk about, Shannon, tell me if this answers your question or not, but is the individuals involved. So I think that might be worth diving into. I mentioned that it's not just a process change, but it's also a resource change on our side. So some of the things we're doing there is, well, first, like on the engineering side. So engineering is a big part of it. The individual that's heading up that department, he's got a PhD in machine learning, so he's been studying this for years. And so we built a team around, both the machine learning and data science that we brought in to also have the engineering chops, the hard, the hard development technologies behind that, because there's actually a lot of like infrastructure we had to build to support this in the first place. AI is so data based, and so making sure we have the source data we can bring into the models to create great content. We have in-house L&D experts, so we have a team that's around training and performance improvement, with degrees there that are involved in that review process of if we're doing anything Gen AI related around in the instructional design world. So say like the learning objectives feature is having that individual and her team involved with reviewing the actual learning objectives that are created and saying, hey, are these actually good learning objectives from an instructional design best practice perspective? From an external perspective, we meet with our clients. We have one of our strategic clients that we've developed an AI council with, where we meet with them on a monthly basis. We've been doing that for about a year now. So that's really beneficial to get us access to, directly from the user, from the client side, as well as leverage some of their resources they have in-house. So it's a really nice, mutually beneficial partnership. We also have an outside vendor we work with that specializes in the educational strategy and instructional design space that, again, provides just a little bit more ID best practice to help us. Again, I probably am harping on the quality piece a lot, but that's so important to me and Chip, our CEO, as we built our AI vision, is that, without the quality, this is nothing. This is useless. You don't actually get the time savings. You don't get the productivity out of this. It needs to be useful. And so that's where we're investing is in bringing all of these outside resources, these subject matter experts in their various areas, and integrating them into the development process.
So it sounds like a lot of checks and balances, Jeff, right? In terms
Well,
of
that and people, yes.
I had a conversation with someone recently, right? Because AI, I don't know if I always like the term demystifying, but it feels like an area that needs to be demystified because it seems really convoluted and complex, but it can actually be really approachable and accessible, right? And so, you don't need a PhD to be able to use AI, right? We have PhDs maybe working on building those models and building those features and functionality. But then on our side, we're just learning how do we use AI maybe as an extension of our team as a teammate. And Evan had a question, and I think it's a great question around, right? Like, and I think we've had this conversation probably before around creating things that have long lasting value versus kind of like things that are AI, but don't actually turn out to be cost effective. So maybe you could speak to like, how do we make sure that we're building things that are actually going to move the needle for people instead of just being like, AI is now in the platform and like doing whatever.
Well, there's a couple of things. So there's like, how do we make sure it moves the needle? And I think that goes back to what I was mentioning earlier around just the focus on the quality and it has to actually deliver on its promise. If it doesn't do that, then it's just kind of like this like shiny object that's cool, but then we just like ignore and stop using. So the way we deliver on its promise is on really the hard numbers, like the productivity. The two metrics that I focus on is the time savings and the quality of the content. And the time savings is it's kind of an easy calculation at the end of the day. I think Melody touched on this in her presentation earlier. And that's one data point, but we, looking at this holistically is like, okay, for the content you're creating, what's the A/B test? How long does it take me to create this same piece of content, manually versus with AI? And what we see pretty consistently is that it is a material amount of time savings, in the order of magnitude of like, hours, not just like a minute or two. So it's real there. It's got to be, to deliver on its value, it has to save time, but then it also has to be able to do so with the same level of quality, or if not that, better. And so one of the big metrics for us that we look at internally is what we call the acceptance rate of AI generated content. And so for the AI generated content that's being created, how much of that percentage wise is being accepted as is, how much of it is being modified and still kept, and how much of that is being thrown out altogether. So we have some internal benchmarks that we keep track of and measure there. Just at a high level, it's typically what we're seeing today is somewhere around like 60 to 70% of our AI generated content it's already being accepted and kept as is. So I feel like that from where we are today, just this early in, is a great place to be, and only getting better. Something interesting that Melody mentioned to me as a byproduct of that is for her content that they're throwing out altogether, that's actually an indication that sometimes the content itself is bad. So if you think about it this way, like if the content's bad, how are you going to expect a human to be able to create a good, assessment question out of that? So why would you expect the AI to be able to do any better? So throwing out a bad question is actually an indicator that, hey, we need to go back and fix the content. So that's just another piece of delivering the value. It's time savings plus quality. I think there was another part to the question there, Shannon, about the value piece. Let me just check and validate real quick. Did I get the full answer, or was there another piece you wanted me to touch on, or Evan?
I think that's good. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of questions. Maybe actually if you could go back and talk a little bit more about, because Charlie had a question around, do you see a way for AI to help apply best practices? So things around like engagement, knowledge transfer, behavior change that aren't as easy to apply, but are even maybe more important than content generation. How can AI support, let's say, like learning science and adult learning principles?
Yeah, I mean, the first and the obvious one is, at least on the Gen AI side, is that you don't need to have all of those best practices, or your team doesn't need to know all those best practices. It can, it can support you in those. And so if you're, say, creating content, and let's say you create a course and you don't have learning objectives, it can come in and suggest and say, hey, the first step you want to do is let's create those learning objectives, and then let's base the course around that. So absolutely can help with the best practices. On the engagement side, again, the way you can use it, this is almost a little bit in the machine learning territory, but still I think the same direction is, we can start to look at, okay, well, ultimately we want, if we're looking at content in the learning process, we want it to be engaging for the learner, and we want it to be effective. We want the learner to actually learn the material. Over a large body of data, we're going to be able to see, well, what are the trends? What type of content leads to more engaging content? What leads to more, higher, or more effective learners as passing their assessments. So absolutely, we can use AI to leverage those best practices and implement them for us.
Yeah, and I think, Jeff, to build off that a little bit, like maybe this is an opportunity where we can peek behind the curtain a little bit, because what you're describing is why you should use AI features that have been built by Intellum specifically, instead of just saying, I'm going to go to ChatGPT and say, build me a course for XYZ topic. And it's largely because like we're rooted in learning science. Our company, all along our development process, has been engaging with both academic experts and instructional designers. And maybe you can talk about how we've done that even with AI a little bit, because that hasn't gone away for us. This has been, we've got a lot of really smart people working in the background on how you take these AI capabilities and use them specifically for education and work in best practices and the best innovations of learning science.
Yeah, I mean, the way I would summarize that, Anderson, is that, we have our own models that we've built, based off of that. This is published, I think, we still leverage OpenAI's API and ultimately their LLM, but we have our own models that we've built on top of that, our own chains. And that's where we've been able to take all of those instructional design best practices from both our team and our partners and incorporate it in that. So almost think about it as like, if you were to go to ChatGPT, that you're going to get that base layer of just kind of like the one size fits all. What you're getting from Intellum is something that incorporates, our body of expertise and knowledge, and, specific information from your account. So if you want to say, well, here's my audience and here's who I'm targeting, and this is what I'm hoping to get out of this course, and then layering that on top of, the Intellum body of work, and then the ChatGPT model or the ChatGPT LLM, it's all additive in that regard.
Yeah, it's like having best practices built in, which I think is beautiful. We're doing a lot of the hard work to ensure quality output from the beginning.
So another question that came in is around, would you see this capability able to interpret materials packaged in SCORM or other somewhat opaque formats where the content need to be in certain formats for AI to be able to understand the materials?
I think what this question is asking is ultimately, is SCORM and other standardized formats, are you able to turn that into something that the AI can ultimately understand and do something with, whether it's generating other content or analyzing and what have you. I'll kind of use this, I'll use this as an opportunity to really tout one of the benefits of our deep integration with Evolve. is that one of the challenge, I didn't talk about this in the challenges section, but one of the challenges we have is that just from a raw SCORM package, it is much more difficult for us to extract and identify the right content from that to do anything with. Whereas because Evolve is in-house and it's native, we're able to package and or unpackage and analyze the content of an Evolve course and use that in all of our AI work, just like any other source material. I think we'd like to expand that body of work so it's not just our the content on the platform, but rather many of the other sources. If we think about the whole process of creating a course and all the inputs that go into that, we would love to be able to integrate with those and bring those into the process. We can already do that today with Evolve, which just is kind of a win for us and helps accelerate that process of ultimately getting access to the source content that you can then use to generate or analyze or what have you, whatever you want to do from an AI perspective.
Yeah, and I think that ultimately, like, one of the questions we're asking too is like, our score, are the days numbered for SCORM and other portable formats like that? When there's a future in which we envision content being generated almost on demand and much more flexible in terms of how that's displayed and engaged with the user. But I think that was a super important question and great answer, Jeff, because there is sort of this like liminal space that we'll live in, right? Like where we're still dealing with SCORM packages and we're trying to lean into the flexibility that AI gives us. And I think you're right on. Like Evolve allows you to bridge that gap now with creating content and then in a way that's immediately intelligible by Intellum's AI for all the features that we are adding to the platform in that regard.
So to steal Anderson's term and kind of peeking behind the curtain, what are some of the things that we have built? So we reference AI labs, right? And this is kind of our AI suite of tools, but also how we are like prototyping and working through things. What are some of the things that we've released in there and how do those benefit learners and admins? What are some of those things that we've been working on?
Like inside of labs? Well, so as Anderson mentioned, we have the AI, the generative assessments, we have the automated learning objectives, we have the personalized learning, which is coming out in the next very soon, I should say. And there's some future work we're doing there. I'm going to cheat a little bit, Shannon. One other thing that we haven't launched it, and we won't launch anytime soon in labs. It's not really about labs, but something that's kind of fun to talk about. And kind of we're getting toward the end. It's a good opportunity to kind of just talk about some of the other exciting work going on. So we had a kind of an internal hackathon of sorts a couple of months back, where one of our teams, this was just a couple of engineers, and one of those teams went off and built on their own in just a week. They built a prototype of what a fully audio chat-based learning experience might be like for a learner in a course. And this was intended to only ever be a prototype, nothing that would go into the product. But it was, for me, why I wanted to touch on it. I was hoping to find a way to weave this into the conversation, is that for me, this represents kind of like the real innovation that's going on in terms of like, how do we, almost like take a thought experiment and actually run with it. So I'm from a product development perspective, a huge fan of rapid prototyping to test out a concept in a product. It's one thing to put pen to paper, but it's a whole other thing to actually, to build out a prototype and start using it in a real world environment to feel how that's actually what's going to work well and what's going to not work well, especially once you start introducing new design paradigms, which, again, as I mentioned earlier, one of the big challenges we're trying to figure out is like, what is the new design of AI in that intent-based world? So I really enjoyed that. It's also just amazing to see what, a couple of folks could do in just a week, being really focused and not being pulled into other ways. So that's always fun. And then, of course, just like thinking about like the opportunity to experiment and really saying, okay, well, we have this vision of what AI can become, going back to that virtual tutor that I mentioned, like we all know that that's where this is going. What can we do today to actually build that virtual tutor and seeing like, wow, we can get really freaking close. I mean, the devil's in the details, of course, but we can get really close already today, and that's what's exciting. It makes me feel like, okay, this is real, this is coming. The real question is just when. Is this, months down the road, or maybe a year or two, but probably not much more than that.
That is very exciting. There was another question. Hold on, let me pull it up here. Mark had asked, and I like this one. Do you see certain industries leading the way for AI-driven learning, right? So, I mean, I think back to how Intellum started, right? And our vision to change the way that the world learns, right? Like, we all need to learn for our jobs. And honestly, a lot of learning experiences kind of sucked. And like that was where our founders saw an opportunity of, okay, this has to happen, but it doesn't have to be boring. Can we make kind of modern learner first experiences? What are some companies or ways that that you think are leading the way?
Mark and Shannon, I think it's more than this. I think this is like really like this is going to sound, probably exaggerated, but the whole way of how we learn is going to change. Like, I don't think this is a specific to the education industry or the customer education industry. I think like software as a whole is going to be disrupted in terms of like how software is built and how it's delivered and how it's used. And so this is kind of a generic answer, but it's really up to who is going to lead the way. It can come from any number of different industries. We want to and believe we can be on that forefront on the Intellum side, in terms of just rethinking these new paradigms. And it is a whole new way of learning. Put it this way, if we don't do it, someone else is going to. And so our focus on it is the same. We can do it. Let's go do that.
I think that's a great way to wrap up our session, because we're right at time and you just kind of summed it all up. Hey, if not us, then who? And if not now, then when, right?
And I know I'm a little biased here, but yeah.
Well, of course, right? You're VP of product.
Yeah.
But I think that you think about this stuff all the time. And so there are, few people, I think, in our industry with the kind of vantage point that you have. So I appreciate you, Jeff, spending time with us today and the insights that you shared. Shannon, thank you for hosting and moderating. And for those that attended today, great questions. We didn't get to all of them. Some of them we typed some answers to, and I think we could easily go on another 30 or 40 minutes, but we said that we would be done at quarter till the top of the hour. So this was great. Every time I talk about this stuff or get to write about this stuff, I get more excited about Intellum's path towards these intent-based user experiences and streamlined content creation, true personalization. So anyway, thank you everybody for your attentiveness today and the whole AI Summit. Thanks for your participation. And on behalf of Shannon and Jeff and myself, we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you all.